Hi there, and welcome to insidetracks.co.uk, the website and YouTube video channel and MailChimp newsletter that tries to help you in your trading on Betfair. We're doing today a look at all weather. I don't really do the jumps, so I spend most of my time in the winter looking at the all weather, and I thought I'd share with you some of the key knowledge you probably need to know about in understanding the all-weather tracks and why they are very different, and why some horses work well and run well on some tracks and not on others, so that you can get an edge and in your trading. If you like this video, please do like it and share it, and subscribe to the channel, and you'll get all the latest ones that I do for free. Okay, so we are now going to go down and look at the all-weather tracks. What is the difference, the main difference between the tracks? Of course, they're not the same shape, and I'll show you that in a minute. But the main difference is, in fact, what the all-weather surface is made of. You've got Polytrack, you've got Tapeta, and you've got Fibresand. So I'm now going to go into those in a bit more detail. So the most common and most popular all-weather track is something called Polytrack. It's a whole load of basically looks like the insides of beds put down onto a track. It's the most popular choice because it's a fast surface. There's a little jar when the horses put their feet down and run on it, so it's not a hard surface, it's quite forgiving, and there's little or very little kickback on most of the surfaces. I'll talk about Chelmsford in a minute. Horses can enjoy the racing because it's quickly gains its shape after being raced on, so there's less stress on the tendons, and a lot of trainers like to bring the 2-year-olds out onto Polytrack surfaces. So who are the tracks? The main tracks with Polytrack surfaces are Kempton. Kempton's a lovely track, very flat, fair, and it has virtually no kickback, and most trainers say it's like their horses running on a nice carpet. That's how you can view it. There is an interesting variation at Kempton, and that is that they have 2 loops. One's the inner loop and one's the outer loop. And I'm now going to just show you that a bit more right now. So I'm just going to show you now one of the blogs from the Inside Tracks website, which looks particularly at Kempton and the other all-weather tracks. In there we've got pictures of the track. Kempton's a lovely place to go, beautiful stands. But here's what I'm talking about in terms of the loops. So that's the outer loop there. On the outer loop, you get a much more easier turns going round, and you have a longer straight. Obviously there's about 3.5 furlongs from there to the finish, so it's not as tight, and there's a longer finish, so it suits the outer ring suits sort of galloping types. And then particularly on the inner loop, that's where the 5 furlongs is run over. So on the 5 furlong course, suddenly, instead of suiting big rangy galloping types, now you want a nippy sort that will come up the inside, grab the inside rail, go around this tight rail, and be in front when it comes out the other side, because then he's only got 1.5 furlongs or so to get to the finish, and by the time any other big horse who's lolloping has got going, you're away and gone, and he's still winding up. So be careful at Kempton. In the 5 furlongs, if you've got a nippy, pacey sort in the stall one, it's a big advantage. So that's Kempton. The next Polytrack course is Lingfield. Lingfield is an interesting course, and one of the main features of the Lingfield course is that the back straight is quite a good downhill component to it. So you actually wind up with horses going down the back straight at really quite a rate, and then they come into two fairly tight bends before coming down to the bottom to the lowest part of the track, coming up the final bend and going up about 2 furlongs, slightly uphill. So actually this track suits speedy sorts who can get around the tight bends and get themselves out in front. And I'll just show you a little bit more about Lingfield just now. So again, I'll come back down to the blog on insidetracks.co.uk, where we look at Lingfield, and we can see again Lingfield, one of the older tracks in the country. Very much like Kempton's, got some really good racing. Kempton, because it kept quite a lot of the racing that it had on the flat, on the turf, those good races were kept, and so they have some really nice horses running at Kempton. And Lingfield holds the all-weather championship, so that's why Lingfield has a lot of good horses. The surface, as we've said, is Polytrack, and it favours the speedy horses. And you get faster finishes. Why? We'll have a quick look at the track, and we'll see that we have a sort of slight downhill to about here, then that's the lowest part of the track, then it comes up to the finish, goes up to the top of the hill, and then down quite a steep, not big steep, but reasonably steep for horses. They pick up the speed, and then they have to come around that sharp bend and then down past that sharp bend before coming up again the 1.5 furlongs to the finish. So it's quite a sort of tricky track. Good jockeying for position, and certainly here on the 5 furlong course, where they come in off a slight shoot, they're coming straight into a sharp bend, down here, straight up a sharp bend and up. So if you have a nice nippy sort in drawn low, then you could sometimes have a really good advantage at Lingfield. But as I said, there's some really good racing at Lingfield because of the all-weather championship. So it's one of those ones. And finally, we've got Chelmsford, which is quite a recent addition to the all-weather tracks. It's the second youngest track out there. Youngest is Newcastle, which I'll come to later. Chelmsford's nice, modern, well-built, quite flat, circular, sweeping bends. The Polytrack they put on it is slightly different to Kempton and Lingfield in that it does create quite a lot of kickback. And if you have a horse that is in the middle of the field, quite often they really don't like it. It's not very pleasant for them. So actually, who Chelmsford seems to favour, it's a good galloping track, but it's also favours front runners. So something that can get out quickly and get in front and get into its rhythm is quite difficult to overtake because it's not as nippy as say Lingfield. So as you can see here, Chelmsford City is now what it's called. It used to be called Great Lees, and I think you can see here quite clearly as the horses are running. There's quite a lot of kickback there that you don't see on other courses. But equally, when you look at the map of the course, you can see that there's some quite nice, long, round bends. So this isn't sort of nippy stuff. This is good galloping surface. But I think that the Polytrack is deeper, and it's slightly more like Fibresand, but it's not. I'll come to Fibresand in a minute. So whilst it is a Polytrack surface, it seems to act a bit more like softish ground. So it's difficult for horses to pick up steam and to get going. So closing horses with a turner's pace is like them running in sand. So it's a bit like, if you can, Kempton would be like wet sand, and Chelmsford would be a little bit like dry sand. More difficult to kick off from and more difficult to get up pace from. And so what you find is that horses that get out in front are very difficult to pass. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult for them to pass. And sometimes you find a front runner, you think they're going to get overtaken, and they never are. So that's Polytrack for you. The next course that you want to have a look at is Tapeta. And Tapeta is very similar to Polytrack, but I think you can see that there's a bit more giving in Tapeta. There's almost no kickback though, so even though there is give, there's no kickback. And I say it's a bit more versatile than Polytrack. It's a very fair surface, and horses run quite well on it, as it's similar as all weathers could be. So Wolverhampton, the track's very tight, and the final bend acts as a kind of slingshot. Horses who are well out in front coming off the final bend are quite often caught in that final furlong, and you see a lot of horses just being chinned at the post, and the number of 101s and 1.1s that are beaten is one of the highest in the country on this track, and it is the most difficult track in the UK to front run on over 1 mile, 1 mile 1 and 7 furlongs. It's pretty difficult. So Wolverhampton is an incredibly difficult track for those who want front runners. The only distance that the front runners might have a bit of an advantage on is to 5 furlongs, because you go straight into the bend, and there's little chance for those who are coming from behind. If they aren't up with the pace, they can't just get off that final bend and get up in the last half furlong, as with other distances. So that's the only time when you can give yourself a chance, if you've got a very speedy sort coming out of trap 1 or trap 2, sorry, stall 1 or stall 2, and then you have a chance of getting there and staying out in front. It's quite difficult to do. So again, we got a nice little course. It's in the middle of a town, so it's a bit squashed. And you can see that here. It's quite squashed. So these 2 turns, unlike at Chelmsford, they're really quite tight. But what you find is that horses seem to come around here and then back in through, and they just in this last bit, they seem to be able to give themselves a slingshot, and those that are chasing often seem to come home extremely well. As I said, the 5 furlong course, you've got a very short run to the first corner. You can get your horse out in front there, kicks off the bend about here, and can stay out in front up to about here. Then it has a chance of staying. But so many horses get caught in this very last half furlong here. The other course, which is Tapeta, is Newcastle. It's the latest course to be added to the all-weather circuit, and the track is unique in that it has slightly uphill 1 mile straight, so you can run a lot of 7 furlong 1 mile races, which a lot of the trainers want to run, for instance, 2-year-olds over. And they can come up to Newcastle. People like Stout and Gosden like to send their 2-year-olds up because it's a nice surface. The Tapeta surface is very forgiving. It's not going to do their horses any damage. It's a consistent, going. So it's consistent going is there. So you've got a situation where if you've got a 2-year-old, you want to just give it a few runs and some experience. Then they send them up to Newcastle. Got this nice straight 1 mile course, and they can learn their trade without being off balance, going around a bend or getting stuck in the mud or whatever it happens to be. So Newcastle's a nice course. It suits big galloping types, and if they do well at Newcastle, they often then go on and do pretty well at places like Newbury and Newmarket, which are also straight courses. So you can see that's the nice long straight that that they've got to run up, and on the map you also see that there it is, that nice straight. So even if they're running over 1 mile 4, for instance, they do have to run round bends, but often these 2-year-olds who are going to go on and do the Derby, for instance, and the Guineas, which is 1 mile 2, 1 mile 4, they want to run those youngsters over 7 and furlongs and a mile, and as 2-year-olds it's perfect for them. So that's why a lot of the trainers choose Newcastle to run their 2-year-olds at. And now the final surface, we have Polytrack, we've had Tapeta, and now we have Fibresand. Fibresand is an entirely different surface. It's more like fluffed up. It feels like sand, but it's sort of sand stuck together, and it's completely different. And Southall is the only one to use, of course, to use it. It's much slower than the other 2 surfaces, and it's a lot harder work for the horses. So you have a horse coming on Fibresand and it's going over 6 furlongs. Be sure if it's going to have a chance of winning, it's done sort of it's got some kind of form over 7 furlongs on another track, because Fibresand takes it out of them. And in fact, it's why Fibresand, actually, the 5 furlongs is less than 5 furlongs. It's the only track in the country where the 5 furlongs course is less than 5 furlongs. So it's a lot harder work. If you said that Polytrack was similar to good going on turf, then Fibresand would be very similar to soft, and I suppose that's the best way to try and explain it. Chelmsford gives some kickback, but compared to Fibresand, that's not really it. And a lot of horses really don't like the kickback. And some commenters say it's more equivalent to US dirt tracks, where dirt tracks where there's a lot of the foot of the horse goes in quite deep. And so we're really talking about certain actions that do well, certain horses with certain actions that do well here. And of course, that's got the action that a horse has to do with their stallion. And so, in fact, stallions from the US do really quite well on Southall, as opposed to British and Irish stallions, and that's borne out by the stats. So be sure that if you're going to go and back some horse at Southall, that it has, well, if you can't check the stallion's stats, which you probably don't want to, the quickest way is to check has it got form at Southall before, and if it has, then that would be much more favourable than a similarly formed horse who hasn't got form at Southall. So for the final time, we'll have a quick look at the blog and show Southall. Here's the picture of Southall. It's actually a very similar shape to Wolverhampton. It doesn't run unlike Wolverhampton, but because the 5 furlongs is a straight 5 furlongs, it's slightly less than 5 furlongs, but as I've told you. But the bends are quite tight, and there's nothing worse than seeing your horse coming around this final bend of 5th or 6th, having masses of kickback thrown in its face, and then trying to get past. There's another quick factor that you need to know is that with Fibresand, for some reason, the way they've laid it at Southall, the inside 4 horses width up against that rail on the far side is slower than further out. So you often see horses coming off this bend and going down the middle rather than keeping tight to the bend. You think, why don't they go tight to the bend? Why don't they go up the inside there? And it's because the jockeys know they went up the inside there, they're on the slower ground or slower surface, and they would never get there. Whereas at Wolverhampton, for instance, you see some jockeys really using that bend well and coming up the inside and gaining themselves a little bit of advantage. So watch out for that. And of course, coming down the 5 furlong course, you often see the ones that are low drawn trying to get out into the middle, and the ones that are high drawn trying to push into the middle, and so you actually wind up with sort of an arrow shape. And the ones that get out in front can get to the best ground. So over 5 furlongs, you quite often see jockeys trying to get their horse prominent or out in front in order to grab the best ground. So that's Fibresand. I think I've told you about all the different services. Polytrack being the most popular, Tapeta being the next most popular, Fibresand only being at Southall. Knowing where your horse is running, is it speedy, is it galloping, does it like a soft surface, does it like a more good going, will tell you who's going to do well on what course. And of course that knowledge that you've just gained hopefully will give you that bit of advantage when you're looking at the race, and give you that edge as to if you've got one horse who's great at Kempton, it's won all of its last 4 races at Kempton, but it's coming to Fibresand, and it beat, you know, Johnny Come Lately at Kempton by 5 lengths. But now Johnny Come Lately comes back to Fibresand, and he loves Fibresand. He's won his last 3 races at Southall, and the winner on the Polytrack hasn't run it on the Fibresand, or has run badly on Fibresand. You'll just see the horse, that the form will be reversed for sure. So you actually wind up knowing that in that situation, just on a pure form level, that you would look at a newspaper and say, well, it's beaten him by 5 lengths last time out, it must be better. Actually, if you knew your courses and you knew who was doing well on each course, then you would know that that 5 lengths is very easily reversed by a switch from Kempton to Southall. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like it. Comment if you think I got something wrong, or you think I got something right, or you want to make any other comment at all. I'd be happy and like to hear your comments. And please do subscribe to the channel, and you will get any further videos that I do. Cheers then. Best of luck with your trading.